I have abandoned our child back in the States right now. And if I can't even take care of a dog, how can I expect to take care of a human?
James makes a good point. Caring for a pet is a serious responsibility, but not as much as caring for a baby. The thing is James just using their dog as a handy tool to show Tatha that they'd be unfit parents? Because if he is, she's not biting.
It's like, what's the purpose of marriage then?
Being with you.
Yeah, but I also want to have like a complete family.
Not being sure there's any point remaining married might be a massive warning sign. But before we get to that, let's rewind to the start. So the last time we saw the pair, they'd finally mustered up the courage to talk about whether or not they want kids. James's stance is that before they make any final decisions, they should first focus on building their new life in Indonesia. And when we join them in this episode, it seems like they're beginning to do just that.
James been living in Indonesia for a week, and today we're going to the immigration because he need a visa to live here.
Wow, so that seems like a big step, doesn't it? If they're applying for a visa for him to live there, that kind of implies that he's now made up his mind. He's gonna definitely live there. Remember, up until this point, he wasn't entirely sure that that was the case. He wanted to assess how they'd make money, something we're gonna come back to shortly. Now, the thing is, on what should be quite a momentous, happy day, Tatha is distracted. Her mind is on other things.
After me and James have a conversation about having kids, it's really weighed on me, but I've been trying to hide my emotion because I don't want to fight.
Tatha still wants answers, but for right now, not fighting is more important than getting her answers. Now, that doesn't mean that she's prepared to wait indefinitely for James to make up his mind about whether or not he wants kids. Only, the thing is, James is much more focused on how they're actually gonna survive in Indonesia. You see, he's now come to the conclusion that the banana chip business isn't gonna work for them. So, what's his alternative plan? How are they gonna make money?
We had a jewelry business back in the States, and that's something that I would really like to try to start over here if we could. I want us to be making our own way.
I wonder how well that jewelry business actually did for them back in the States. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're still in debt, and back in the States, James also had a full-time job. You've definitely got to question whether that will be enough for them to survive on here. But I guess at least they now have a plan. It might not be the best plan, but they have some sort of goal to work towards. So with that concern now addressed, talk soon turns to their other little family member, their dog, Jojo, who they had to leave behind. Now, as you may recall, the reason James gave for why they couldn't bring Jojo with them was because of a rabies outbreak. But as it now turns out, he has some more bad news to share.
But now the other thing with it as well is even if we brought him here somehow, he would never be allowed to go back into the US currently.
That is devastating news for Tatha. As James explains, they need to choose very carefully. They could bring Jojo over, but the rabies situation in Indonesia is apparently so bad that if he comes and things don't work out and they need to return, Jojo wouldn't be allowed to come back with them. They'd need to leave him permanently in Indonesia. And learning this suddenly makes Tatha really miss Jojo. Can we go and visit him? She tearfully asks.
Can we at least visit him?
Financially, we can't afford that at all. We have no income.
Well, what did she think James was gonna say? Yeah, Tatha, no problem. Let me arrange a private jet for you. Like, here's what gets me, right? Tatha knows as well as James does that they have no income and no real plan to get money. they're broke, and it really feels like she hasn't grasped or she doesn't want to acknowledge the seriousness of the financial reality they face. She seems happy to bury her head in the sand and just hope everything will figure itself out. Now, the thing is, for as much as she might live in Cloud Cuckoo Land, I genuinely do feel for her here. She's faced a lot of disappointments in the last week, and it's clearly getting to her.
I don't have a kid. I also don't have a Jojo. What do I have? It just feels empty.
There's this tangible pain in her voice as she talks that really cuts deep. For Tatha, a lady who usually cries so easily, to be saying that in such a calm manner makes her words feel even more serious. She loves being back home in Indonesia, but this wasn't the life that she envisaged. And the more they move away from the life she hopes they'd have, the more distant she becomes. But it's not just Tatha who's in pain here. James is hurting too, but interestingly, he sees this, something that's actually out of their control, as a damning reflection of their capabilities as potential parents.
I have abandoned our child back in the States right now. And if I can't even take care of a dog, how can I expect to take care of a human?
I think that's an unfair analogy to make. Like, the government banning international travel for dogs doesn't equate to you being a bad dad. Like, there's definitely a part of James that seems to be using the unfortunate situation they find themselves in, to try and support his view that they shouldn't have kids. Now, we next join the pair later that evening as they head downtown. Tatha wants to take James to share her favourite Indonesian treat, but as they sit and eat, things soon turn serious.
I've been thinking about what James kept saying, if things don't work here. That worries me, because I do want him to be happy here.
For Tatha, there isn't an option. She's determined for them to stay here. Returning to the States isn't something she even wants to contemplate. She doesn't care how they're going to make a living. She doesn't care how they're going to survive. Her only concern is to stay here. But James sees things very differently, and he begins to list on the day that he's just applied for his visa to live there permanently. He begins to list all the reasons why they might need to return.
For me, the biggest is still Jojo and the car. And we're still paying for it. I mean, that's a huge cost. And right now, I don't see any way to fix it.
Again, there's something in the way that he's doing this that makes me feel like he's weaponizing their dog. He's using it as ammo to try and play on her feelings. Like, just think about this for a second. Is the issue with Jojo even all that big? They're in Indonesia. Jojo can come to Indonesia. If they're both determined and on the same page to make a life out there, then there's no problem. That's it. It's okay. The problem only arises if they change their mind and want to go back to America. So should that really factor as a barrier for staying? Or is the real reason that James actually just doesn't want to stay?
What if I didn't think that I could stay here permanently? Like, would you come back with me if that was something that happened?
Yeah, that isn't a question that Tatha wants to hear. Just look at her face. Now, whatever the real core reason for James feeling like this, I think it is clear that he's having second thoughts about living here permanently. He's desperately trying to think of reasons, any reasons, dogs, finances, car debt, whatever it may be. He's desperately clutching at straws to try and find a way to go home. So, is Tatha on board? Would she go back with him if he chose to leave?
Maybe, but let's make that not happen.
She's vague purposefully, I feel. The way she worded it.
Ouch. Ouch. That drawn out maybe really didn't sound too convincing. That has got to hurt. Her telling him that they shouldn't let that happen felt like a warning, didn't it? Now, the irony here, and you can't help but see the funny side, is that James isn't happy. In fact, he recognises how vague Tatha is with her answer. That's the kind of answer I'd give if she asked me whether or not I want kids, he says. Yeah, takes one to know one, doesn't it? Both seem to say one thing, but really mean another.
You know, I just want to know that if everything did go bad, that you wouldn't just abandon me and Jojo.
I'm not gonna abandon you.
Again, look at him using the dog to pull on her heartstrings. He's basically saying here, if you're not willing to come back, Tatha, you're the one abandoning our dog, our baby. Like, this strategy he's adopting here doesn't feel cool at all, does it? Now, Tatha's response is to say that she won't abandon either of them. But at the same time, she does have a lot of fears.
I was a little worried if in the future that you don't want to have a kid at all. Like, I'm almost 28 now.
Look, 28 is still young, right? She does still have time on her side, but it's not indefinite. Time is ticking. She doesn't want to waste time, right? She doesn't want to be in a situation where 6-7 years down the line, James decides he doesn't want kids and she's left out in the lurch. Like, that could cost her the opportunity of ever being a mother, even if she were to walk away from James. So she says to James, the oldest I'm prepared to wait to become a mum is 33. Don't forget, she says, I also have thyroid problems. I don't want to leave it too late. Which then leads James to ask her, what if I decide I never want kids? And her response says a lot.
Like, what's the purpose of marriage then?
Being with you.
Yeah, but I also want to have like a complete family.
And for as much as James tries to reassure her that they, just the two of them, are a complete family, that he himself should be enough for her, deep down, I think he knows he's not enough. She's always wanted kids of her own. She's been honest about that even before they got married. That hasn't now changed. I don't think it will ever change. Which raises the question, where does this leave their marriage?
I want her to understand that. Like, this is not me trying to hurt her.
I can't lose her. That is all I care about.
Sadly, James, for all your declarations of love, for all the fighting talk that you never want to hurt her or lose her, if you're not prepared to give her what she wants most in the world, that decision might be out of your hands.